They say every storm starts with a stillness. Quiet, almost tender. Mine began the day my son looked at me like I was furniture he'd outgrown. I fed him through failure, held him through shame, gave him everything. Then, he won the lottery, and I learned just how quickly love can be erased, until I decided to write myself back in. It started the way so many ordinary Tuesdays do. Me in my robe, curling a little from the dryer's heat, easing the porch bin down the driveway for trash collection, muttering about the neighborhood kids who can't be bothered to stack their pizza boxes. Right. The sun wasn't even fully up yet, just that thin gray edge along the fence line. I had my list for the grocery store folded in my coat pocket, already running low on coffee and Tylenol, and I was about to head inside when I heard the front door creak open. "Hey, Ma," came Trevor's voice, light and weirdly upbeat for someone who usually greeted mornings like a mugshot. He stood barefoot in the doorway, rubbing his neck like he'd slept on a pile of rocks, wearing that ratty Iowa State sweatshirt he never washed. "I bought a ticket." "A what?" "A lottery ticket. Powerball. Mega, whatever. You know, just for kicks." I raised my eyebrows. "With what money?" He shrugged. "Used the change from the gas I put in your car last week." That was a stretch. I knew damn well I topped off the tank myself on Friday. Still, I didn't argue. What was the point? It wasn't the first time Trevor had floated on borrowed air. I nodded and went back inside to preheat the oven for my usual apple muffins. I didn't think about it again until 3 days later. He burst into the house like a kid who found out snow days were back on the calendar. "Mom," he said, eyes wild, phone still in his hand. I hid it. I swear to God, I hid it. I turned from the sink, still holding a sponge full of soap. "You hit what?" "The jackpot. I mean, not the full jackpot. No one got the full thing. But I matched 5 numbers. That's still like $17 million. I blinked. "You sure you didn't match 5 coupons from the Sunday paper?" He thrust the phone in my face. There it was. The numbers. The press release. His name wasn't on it yet, but the math added up. $17 million. I sat down slowly, letting the damp sponge fall into the sink. The next 2 days were a blur. He called a lawyer. Someone from the Iowa lottery came to the house with a camera crew. He insisted I wear my good blouse for the background of the video. I smiled politely, even waved when prompted. His voice was syrupy sweet on camera. "I just want to thank my mom. She's been there through everything. I wouldn't be here without her." Then he hugged me in front of everyone, real tight, like he meant it. Like I was more than the backup plan I'd become. Later that night, after they'd gone, we sat at the kitchen table and split a store-bought cheesecake. Trevor opened his laptop and started Googling cars he might want. Then condos. Then something called a silent capital partner opportunity. I watched him click through those glossy images, eyes gleaming. It was like watching a boy build castles out of Monopoly money. "Trevor," I said softly, "don't forget to save. This won't last forever." "I know," he said, brushing me off. "But it's my turn now, Ma. My life's been on pause for years. I've earned this." I didn't argue. I just chewed slowly, the sugar sticking to the roof of my mouth. "He'd earned it," he said. As if all the nights he slept in the basement after his divorce, all the meals he ate that I stretched with coupons and canned beans, as if all of that had been just scenery. To be fair, he was generous at first. Bought me a new phone, one of those fancy ones that keeps asking for my face. Took me to dinner at a steakhouse where the cheapest thing on the menu was mashed potatoes for $12. He even gave me a little card with "For You" written in his handwriting and a check inside. $1,000. I tucked it into my Bible, between Corinthians and the obituary page I saved for Paul. Then came Savannah. I didn't know her yet, but I saw her name pop up on his phone more often than the weather app. She started leaving little things in the house: a jacket, a toothbrush, protein powder the size of a paint bucket. When I mentioned it, Trevor grinned like a teenager. "She gets me," he said. She really believes in my potential. I smiled too, but only with my lips. The house started to change. He had contractors come in to modernize the kitchen, which really meant tearing out the oak cabinets Paul built by hand. My oven, my beautiful, reliable 30-year-old oven, was replaced with a touch-screen monstrosity that beeped if you breathed near it. I burned 3 dinners in a row, just trying to figure out the settings. He said I should be happy. Now you've got options, Ma. He didn't see that all I ever wanted was one. He started sleeping later, staying out longer. He joined a gym, talked about launching a podcast, said things like reinvesting capital and leveraging momentum. Savannah moved in. She called me Miss Evelyn the first time we met, and then never called me anything at all. She smelled like coconut and ambition, the kind of girl who never learned how to close a cupboard properly. One afternoon, I came home from Walgreens to find half my teacups boxed up and labeled Donate. My doilies were missing. The living room rug, the one with the wine stain from Paul's 60th, was gone. I said nothing that day, but something in me, quiet, tired, but still sharp, woke up. That was the week he mentioned the paperwork. Just a few forms, he said. Tax stuff, asset protection. His tone was casual, too casual, like he was offering me a mint, not my own signature. I told him I'd need time to look them over. He kissed my forehead like I was a toddler refusing her nap and said, Sure. No pressure. But pressure has a way of seeping in through closed doors. It comes in the way your name disappears from conversations, in how you start hearing plans you were never part of. It comes when the boy you raised with calloused hands and cracked heels starts talking like you're just a footnote in the credits. And even then, I didn't raise my voice. Not yet. But I made a pot of tea that night, using the chipped kettle Savannah hated, and I sat down at the kitchen table with the papers Trevor left for me. I adjusted my glasses. I opened the folder, and I started reading. The folder was thick, full of clipped paper and cheerful little yellow flags that said, Sign here, like they were inviting me to a birthday party. My name was at the top of every page, printed neat in blue ink, but the tone of it felt distant, clinical. There was a word that kept coming up. Irrevocable. I didn't like that word. It had the weight of a door being locked from the outside. The next morning, I asked Trevor what exactly these documents meant. He was halfway out the door, gym bag slung over his shoulder, like he'd just come from an inspirational TED Talk. It's just estate planning, he said, zipping up his jacket. Putting the house into a family trust, so it's protected long term. It's standard stuff. You'd still be able to live here, of course. Of course, I repeated, the words sticking in my throat like dry toast. He smiled without looking at me. Don't worry, I've got it handled. I didn't sign them. That weekend, Savannah brought in a decorator, a tall, angular woman with a tablet and opinions. She floated through my living room like a realtor at an open house, muttering things like dated upholstery and natural light potential. I watched her touch the edge of Paul's old recliner, then wrinkle her nose, as if love leaves dust behind. I was thinking, Savannah said, it might be nice to do an open floor plan. You know, tear down this wall, expand the dining space. 'Tis gonna need room for his podcast studio anyway. Tea, I asked. She blinked. Trevor. I said nothing. Just ran my hand along the back of the couch, the one where I held him after his first real heartbreak. He cried so hard he hiccuped, and I let him leave snot on my cardigan. That wall she wanted to tear down had held his growth chart. Faded pencil lines from ages 5 through 15. I traced them sometimes when I couldn't sleep. That evening, I made dinner. A real one. Roast chicken, green beans with lemon, and mashed potatoes the way Trevor used to like them, whipped fluffy with butter and cream. I didn't ask if Savannah was vegan. They came in late. Savannah was talking about a restaurant opening. Trevor was nodding along like he understood anything about concept dining. They sat, ate, barely spoke to me. At one point, I offered more potatoes. Savannah smiled. Tight. No thanks, Miss Evelyn. Carbs are basically poison. Trevor chuckled and said, She's a wellness coach now. It's like a whole brand. I looked at my hands, the same ones that had peeled potatoes for 100 holidays. Poison, apparently. After dinner, I started to gather plates, but Savannah jumped up, reaching for the dish soap like she was performing kindness. You rest, Miss Evelyn. I got this. She used the dishwasher. I heard my pie dish clatter against the rack and winced. That dish was older than her. Older than her parents, maybe. That night, Trevor knocked on my bedroom door. He didn't come in, just stood there in the hallway, his shadow long across the carpet. Hey, I know this is all moving fast, but things are changing, Mom. I've got responsibilities now, opportunities. Savannah and I are talking about maybe relocating. Florida, maybe. Tampa. We need to think big. Sounds like you've already decided, I said. He shifted. We'd obviously figure something out for you. A condo nearby, maybe. Or you could stay here for a bit until we lease it. Wheeze it? Lease, he corrected. Rent it out. It's a great property. Could generate decent passive income. I didn't respond. Just stared at the door until his footsteps retreated. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Just essentials. I needed space to think. Somewhere that didn't smell like lemon cleaner and disappointment. I took the bus into town and sat at the public library for hours, thumbing through property records on one of their sticky-screened computers. It took me a while, but I found what I needed. 3 weeks ago, without my knowledge, Trevor had begun the paperwork to move the deed into a trust. My name wasn't listed as trustee. It wasn't listed at all. I printed the page. It cost me 10 cents. I paid in quarters. Then I walked to the office of a woman named Lynette. She used to work with my friend Marjorie and now handled estate admin at a small firm in town. I knocked on the frosted glass, stepped inside with my printout and my sensible shoes, and asked her if I could make an appointment. She glanced at the page and frowned. Are you telling me, she asked, that your name is off the deed and you're still paying property tax? Have been for years, I said. Utilities, too. She leaned forward. Then you've got more claim to that house than he does. I blinked. I hadn't realized how badly I needed someone to say that out loud. Back home, Savannah was rearranging the living room. Trevor was gone. Some conference, apparently, in Denver or Dallas. I forget which. I walked past her without saying a word, went into the kitchen, and made tea the way I liked it. With the old kettle, the chipped mug, 2 sugars and milk. I sat at the kitchen table, put my printed copy of the deed beside my cup, and waited. Not for Trevor, not for permission, for clarity. And it came. Not all at once, but slowly, with each tick of the kitchen clock. I realized something that night. I was done being grateful for scraps. I was done waiting to be asked what I wanted. They might think I was furniture in this house, but they'd forgotten one thing. Furniture doesn't pay the light bill. I do. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with the ceiling fan wobbling above me, the light from the hallway creeping under my door like a reminder. I kept picturing that line on the property form. Trustee, Trevor Allen Morris. My name absent like I'd never lived here, never scrubbed baseboards, or shoveled the driveway after an ice storm with a back brace and borrowed strength. The next morning, I found Trevor in the kitchen, hunched over his laptop with a bowl of some seed-studded sludge Savannah called breakfast. He looked up with that bright pre-coffee grin that meant he either wanted something or had done something I wouldn't like. Hey, Ma, he said, not even pausing what he was typing. Sav and I were thinking, you know that little assisted living community off Route 34? The one with the lake view and the big windows? I narrowed my eyes. The one with the brochure you left in my mailbox? He didn't blink. Yeah, that one. We took a tour. It's nice. Real quiet. They've got classes, crochet, watercolor, even yoga for seniors. I sat down. Trevor, are you suggesting I move out of my own home? He winced, just a little. No, nothing like that. Just thinking ahead, that's all. Planning for comfort. Yours or mine? He sighed and shut the laptop. Look, I get it. Change is hard. But this place? It's not built for aging in place. Too many stairs. That tub is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Savannah almost slipped last week. Then Savannah should wear better shoes. His jaw tightened. You always do this, you know. Make it harder than it has to be. Because I'm not handing you my life on a platter? He stood abruptly. That's not fair. I stood too. No, Trevor. What's not fair is you asking me to sign away everything I've built while you gut this house for your girlfriend's podcast studio. His mouth opened, then closed. He walked out. I called Lynette that afternoon, told her I was ready to move forward. She referred me to someone else. Edward Ramsey, a state attorney, semi-retired, said to be tough as nails and twice as sharp. His office was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner and a vape shop, but inside it smelled like leather chairs and conviction. I brought every document I had. Utility bills, tax forms, even birthday cards Trevor had written thanking me for always being there. Ed read everything in silence, then leaned back in his chair. This house may be in his name now, he said, but you've got leverage. You've lived here for more than 10 years, paid expenses, made improvements. That's called equitable interest. Courts look at that. I nodded, even though my hands were shaking in my lap. We'll file a motion to halt any transfer or lease until the matter's resolved. And if he tries to evict you, we'll file a counterclaim. Evict me. The word sat heavy on my tongue like something spoiled. When I got home, Trevor wasn't there. Savannah was in the living room watching a documentary with the volume too loud. She didn't look up. I went to my room and started a list. I wrote down every purchase I'd made in that house, every repair, every meal, every moment. 2 days later, Trevor asked to talk. He brought wine, the good kind, and tried to pretend it was just dinner. I know this is awkward, he said, but we're not kicking you out. That's not the goal. We're just trying to build something new, Mom. Something bigger, more sustainable. For who? For us. All of us. Look, I talked to a tax guy. He said if we move the house into a full trust, we can write off the upgrades. We'll even give you a stipend. A stipend? I asked, nearly laughing. Like I'm a tenant in my own history? It's not like that. Then what's it like, Trevor? Enlighten me. He hesitated. It's evolving. That night, I packed a small overnight bag and left. I stayed with my friend Carol across town, in her guest room with the squeaky mattress and floral sheets. I needed air, needed space to think, without the sound of Savannah's voice chirping through the walls about brand synergy. The next morning, I went to the county clerk's office and requested a full property record. I wanted to see every date, every signature. The woman behind the desk looked at me with tired eyes and offered a weak smile. You're not the first, she said. People get funny around money. Funny. That was one word for it. Back at Carol's, I took a walk. Her street was lined with maples, turning gold and orange. Kids played with sidewalk chalk. A man waved from a porch swing. Normal. Real. It hit me then. How far from real Trevor had drifted. How much of him had been swallowed by money and mirrors. That evening, I got a text. From Trevor. We need to talk. Savannah and I are making decisions. Please don't do anything rash. I didn't reply. I stared at the message, then turned the phone face down. That night, over peppermint tea, Carol asked what I was going to do. I said, I'm going to take my name back. She blinked. From what? From the bottom of the page. I moved out on a Wednesday morning. Not with fanfare, not with shouting. I didn't slam a door or throw a vase. I just zipped up a single suitcase, the soft blue one with worn wheels, and walked downstairs with my coat folded neatly over one arm. Trevor was in the living room on a Zoom call, wearing a headset and gesturing at some imaginary chart. He didn't even notice I was leaving. Or maybe he did, and decided not to stop me. I didn't leave a note, just set my mug in the sink, still damp from tea, and slipped out the side door. Carol met me at the curb with a hug and a to-go coffee. Her house wasn't big, but it was warm, honest. Her guest room smelled like vanilla and cedar. Not ambition. I slept the first real sleep in weeks that night, with no clicking of laptop keys through the wall or Savannah's voice analyzing user engagement metrics. The next morning, I met with Ed Ramsey again. His office had that same quiet steadiness. He had already filed the motion to contest the trust transfer and drafted a formal letter demanding a full financial accounting of the property under joint use. "You've got standing," he said. "He may not like it, but he can't ignore it." He leaned back in his chair and studied me. "Question is, do you want to fight for the house, or just make it cost him to take it?" "I want it to matter," I said. "He thinks I'm just a variable in a spreadsheet. Let's remind him who built the damn table." We began compiling everything: receipts, bills, tax statements. I found a faded notebook in my nightstand where I'd once kept track of Trevor's unemployment stints, grocery reimbursements I never got, notes from school meetings I attended when his ex-wife couldn't be bothered. The margins were full of little hearts and reminders. T's dentist apt, Wednesday. Don't forget to defrost chicken. Paul's old ladder needs repair. History, in ink. 2 weeks passed. Then one day, Ed forwarded me a notice. Trevor had officially filed to remove me from the property on the grounds of voluntary relocation. It claimed I'd left the home of my own accord and therefore forfeited my rights as a resident. I stared at the words so long my coffee went cold. Forfeited. As if my decades in that house were a rental agreement gone sour. Carol offered me the spare key indefinitely, but I knew I couldn't live in someone else's spare space forever. Not because of pride, but because I needed to act from firm ground. I needed to look my son in the face and let him see I wasn't a shadow. I was still here. So I called a realtor. Not Trevor's. Mine. A woman named Mara. 40-ish, smart as a whip, wore cardigans and ran marathons. She came to Carol's and sat with me at the kitchen table while I laid out everything. She nodded slowly, then said, "We can get a full appraisal, Evelyn. If your name's not on the current deed, but your attorney files an injunction and you have proof of long-term investment, you can argue financial interest." "Even if he paid the mortgage for the last year?" I asked. "Especially if you paid everything else." The house was appraised at just under $400,000. My knees buckled a little at the number. Not because of greed, but because it meant something solid. Something real. I had been treated like a ghost, but the walls remembered me. That night, I didn't cry. I made a grilled cheese and sat on Carol's porch, staring out at the street where nothing needed renovating. No brand strategy, just people who waved to one another because they wanted to, not because there was a camera rolling. The next day, I didn't show up for family dinner night. Savannah texted me a shrug emoji. Trevor sent nothing at all. But the following week, I received a certified letter. He was officially asking me to vacate the premises within 30 days. No love, Trevor. No explanation. Just a typed form with my name on it, signed with the same hand I used to guide across handwriting worksheets. I brought it straight to Ed. He read it, scoffed, then said, "Let's make it hurt." We filed a restraining motion, citing elder vulnerability statutes and domestic financial coercion. It was a mouthful, but it meant something. It meant I wasn't going quietly. That evening, I sat on Carol's couch with a hot pack across my lower back and my lawyer on speaker as he walked me through deposition prep. Trevor wanted this to be clean and quick. I was going to make it long and expensive, and that's when something in me truly shifted. I didn't want revenge. I wanted consequence. The next morning, I emailed a local reporter. She'd written a column a few months back about housing fraud targeting retirees. Her name was Brooke. I asked if she was interested in a different kind of story. She called me within an hour. I told her everything. Not tearfully, not dramatically, just the truth. She listened, asked thoughtful questions, then said, "Do you mind if I record this part?" "I've been recorded plenty lately," I said dryly. "Might as well say something worth hearing." The article went up 2 days later. The headline read, "She helped him win the lottery, then he tried to erase her." By dinner, it had over 6,000 shares. And suddenly, people were looking. At me, at him, at what happens when we mistake money for merit. Trevor didn't call, but Savannah posted something vague about boundaries and energy vampires on Instagram. It didn't matter, because the tide had turned, not just legally, but narratively. And stories, especially the true ones, are hard to silence once they find daylight. The house looked smaller when I drove past it again. Not physically, of course. The roof still sagged slightly at the eaves. The shutters still needed repainting. But something about it seemed diminished. Maybe it was the realtor's lockbox on the front door. Maybe it was the Tesla parked crooked in the driveway, like it had better places to be. Trevor hadn't spoken to me in nearly 2 weeks, not since the article dropped. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. Savannah, as expected, doubled down on Instagram. Sometimes healing means removing the source of your generational trauma. Just because someone raised you doesn't mean they raised you right. The post got hundreds of likes. She turned off the comments by evening. I spent the days quietly. Ed handled the filings. Brooke followed up on the story with a second piece, this time quoting a housing policy expert who called it a cautionary tale of informal caregiving gone legally unrecognized. The headline was blunt: "This is what happens when you don't put it in writing." But not everything was digital. Some things arrived by hand. Flowers, notes. One woman brought a blueberry pie and hugged me at Carol's front steps, like we'd gone to church together for 30 years. "My daughter did something similar," she whispered. "I just didn't know I was allowed to say it out loud." Then came the letter from Becca, Trevor's ex-wife. I recognized her handwriting before I opened it. Still sharp, still neat, with those loops that always made her grocery lists look like wedding invitations. She wrote that she saw the article, said she wasn't surprised, said, "He's always been like this, only grateful when he's losing." Attached was a folded sheet of printer paper, an email, from Trevor, dated 3 years ago. "If it weren't for Mom, I'd be on the street. She still pays the gas bill. I don't even ask anymore. She just does it." Ed read it and smiled. "This is gold," he said. "Shows dependency. Shows acknowledgement. Admissible." Meanwhile, Trevor had filed a formal eviction notice through the court system, attempting to prove I was no longer a contributing resident. We responded with a motion of our own, petitioning for legal recognition of my equitable interest and rights to remain on the property. The court date was set for the following Tuesday. I bought a new blouse, not because I wanted to impress the judge, but because I deserved to feel put together. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, hands a little shaky, and pinned Paul's old cufflink to my collar. A small thing, silver, shaped like a compass. He used to say it reminded him to stay pointed north, even when you're lost. Outside the courthouse, Brooke waited with a notepad, hair frizzing in the Iowa wind. "You ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. Inside, Trevor looked different. Not poor, no, the money still clung to him, but smaller. The suit was tailored, but his shoes squeaked when he walked. He didn't look at me. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with a tone like cold granite, heard both sides. Ed presented documents, Becca's email, tax records, my utility bills. Trevor's lawyer argued technicalities. They brought up the deed, the trust, the timeline of my departure. But when I was called to the stand, I told the truth. I raised him in that house, I said. I fed him, cleaned for him, paid bills he never saw. I let him move back in when he was 32 and broken. I didn't ask for rent. I asked for decency. There was a silence in the courtroom when I finished. The judge didn't rule that day. She said she'd issue her decision by week's end. It's a complex case, she said, but not a rare one. On the courthouse steps, Trevor brushed past me. "You've ruined everything," he muttered low. "No," I said steady. "You did that all on your own." 3 days later, Ed called me early. "She ruled in our favor," he said, voice thick with satisfaction. "You retain legal right to occupy the home indefinitely. He cannot sell it, lease it, or transfer it without your written consent." I sat very still on Carol's porch, phone against my cheek, the wood warm beneath me. "He's gonna lose it," I murmured. "He already has," Ed replied. Later that afternoon, I went back to the house, not to gloat, just to see. The Tesla was gone. Savannah, too. The podcast mic lay abandoned on the kitchen counter, coiled like a question. I didn't stay long, just enough to walk through the rooms, to feel the walls breathe again, to sit once more at the table where I'd signed permission slips and wrote checks I couldn't afford. I left a note on the counter. "You forgot your protein powder." Then I turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked out with my name intact. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage after the play ends, curtains half drawn, lights cooling, and nothing left but echoes. I stood there for a long time that night, fingers trailing along the banister Paul built with his own hands, and I knew. I didn't want to keep it. Not as a trophy, not as a battleground, not as a tomb for what used to be. So I called Mara, the realtor, told her I was ready to list it. She asked me 3 times if I was sure. I told her I was more than sure. I was done. Done waiting for someone else to offer peace in a place where I'd had to fight just to breathe. We staged it lightly, just enough to make it feel like possibility, not history. The offer came in fast. Full asking price. Young couple, newly married, expecting their first baby. They fell in love with the backyard, the hardwood floors, the way the morning light hits the front window just right. I signed the papers without a tremble. The closing check was big, bigger than I expected. I moved most of it into a savings account, then called a small foundation I'd read about, one that helped elderly people navigate housing insecurity. Told them I wanted to fund a legal defense grant in my name. They were stunned. One woman cried. I didn't. I'd done enough crying for a dozen lifetimes. The rest I used to buy a condo in Tucson, Arizona. Paul always talked about retiring there. Warm bones, quiet nights, no ice to scrape off the windshield. I found a unit in a complex filled with retirees who played cards on Thursdays and left little bags of oranges on each other's doorknobs. My neighbors wave without looking over your shoulder. The first morning I woke up there, I made coffee and watched the sun come up over the red hills. No shouting, no lawyers, just light. That afternoon, I got an email from Brooke. Her follow-up story had run nationally, syndicated across dozens of papers. My name had become something of a symbol, not a victim, a warning. A woman who said no, finally, and made it count. I also got a voicemail from Trevor. His voice was clipped, distant. "Hey, so I tried to apply for a business loan for that podcast startup. The bank flagged the court case, said my reputational profile was a liability. I don't know if you're still mad or if you even care, but anyway, hope you're okay." He didn't say goodbye. I didn't call back. A week later, Savannah posted a reel about starting over with clean energy and opened a smoothie bar in Orlando. Their joint venture never launched. I heard he's renting now. Smaller place, fewer followers. Meanwhile, I got a letter in the mail from a woman named Ashley in Pennsylvania. She'd used the grant I funded to fight a wrongful eviction. She wrote, I was scared. I thought no one would believe me. But then I read your story. Thank you for giving someone like me a chance. I folded that letter and tucked it into my Bible, right where Trevor's old thank you card used to be. That one I'd thrown away. That evening, I sat on my little balcony, the air dry and sweet with cactus bloom, and watched the sky turn lavender. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be useful, quiet, forgiving. I thought about how small I made myself just to fit in his world. No more. I raised my glass of lemonade to the dusk, smiled to no one in particular, and whispered, "Here's to what comes next." Maybe I lost a son, but I found myself. And that, darling, is worth more than $17 million.